David, one of the other areas I feel that we're perhaps not as strong as we could be is in education.
Right.
Now, I think that's what's happening in education with the Labour government at the minute is appalling. You know, the putting VAT on private school fees, it's going to bounce back to hurt the economy very badly. And I just wonder what you think the way forward is in terms of education, both in terms of funding it, but also in terms of making sure that the curriculum which is being taught is appropriate.
Well, I have to say I'd probably take a slightly more jaundiced view than you do, Ken. I actually think we have a situation where we have indoctrination centres. It was quite clear that Blair in '97 insisted that everyone went to university, and that was twofold. One, to take young people off the unemployment statistics, but also that they would be indoctrinated. And we're now seeing the benefits of all of those people in senior positions, and that's part of the problem since '97. But going back to education per se, we have fundamental problems here that we are not teaching children how to think. We're teaching them what to think. And until you start getting that right, everything else doesn't follow. And so there needs to be a fundamental root and branch removal of certain bad influences and bad actors in the educational system. I mean, the education secretary is personally, I think, is an utter disgrace. An absolute disgrace of a human being and the way she has tackled education. The VAT on private schools is purely ideological because there's an assumption that all rich people send their kids to that posh school over there and all the poor kids go over there. And of course, that's not true. We have plenty of middle-class people who scrimp and scrape, don't go on holidays year in, year out because they want to give their children the best education. They are now in a situation, I'll give you an example here, Ken, which you probably have heard of, whereby a family took their children out of a private school because they could no longer afford the increase brought on by the VAT exemption removal. They went into the state sector. The state sector couldn't accommodate them. So the state sector then paid for them to go to a private school.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't write this.
In terms of the economics of it, you know, the fact that you'll have so many people moving from private to state education, there'll be no cost saving at all. In fact, it's going to be costing money.
Well, it's a similar thing to the winter fuel allowance for the elderly. You remove it, and then they
all
say,
go to pension credit.
You can all get pension credits. Well, the pension credit, if they all did it, would actually cost more than the money, the 1.4 billion that the government's saving. And I don't know whether it's incompetence or deliberate, but here is a government that clearly has no ability to do maths and doesn't take advice from anybody who does know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's quite clear, I think, that even the Bank of England, who I have my own personal views about, particularly around the Liz Truss debacle, but the Bank of England is starting to twitch now at the sheer incompetence of Rachel Reeves.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you saw the picture of her in the Commons yesterday, but she looks half dead.
She does, yeah. I mean, no one expects that kind of job isn't pressurised, no matter.
No, but she's made so many bad decisions already.
And this is a liar. Let's be honest. You know, this is a liar. And a person who's lied consistently since she got into office. And I think it's beyond her, but equally so, Ken, I think it's beyond any of them. I think they are people who thought it was great in opposition, because it's easy in opposition. You don't have to make a decision. You can throw sort of stones and get away with it. Now you're actually in power. You've had 14 years to get your act together. And in the space of 6 months, we're on to destroying this country, this great country. Now, the Conservatives were bad, but they weren't this bad.
No, I agree. Going back to the education thing, I think the key to it is to allow parents to have some choice in terms of the type of school that they send their kids to. Now, in my view, the way you do that is to abolish all the local education authorities. So you take schools completely out of the local authority control. They all become effectively independent academies, run by a board of governors, picked from the locality, etc. And you allow each school to develop in the way it wants to. So you may have a Muslim school or a Roman Catholic school or not even faith-based school, but you may have any type. But what it does is it then gives the parents the opportunity to select the school that's most appropriate for the child.
The problem with that, of course, Ken, is if you're a socialist, because and I'm paraphrasing my hero Margaret Thatcher here by saying the problem with socialism is if you allow people choice, they may not choose socialism. And if you look at what Catherine Berbel-Singh is doing with
absolutely
wonderful school, you would think as a government that you would want every other school to raise their bar to that level.
Yeah.
What they actually want them to do is they want to destroy Catherine Berbel-Singh because they don't want people to have choice. Because if you have choice, Ken, you won't pick the socialist incompetent school. You'll go to the good school run by the likes of Catherine Berbel-Singh.
Yep.
And so that then means that your socialist utopia no longer works.
But I mean, if you're going to actually make strides in having better education, what you want is for the good schools to thrive and for the bad schools to wither and die.
Now, I've got to disagree with you there, Ken, you see. Socialists don't want you to be educated. Education in this country is about keeping people down. It is about basically like battery hens. You give them just enough education to read and write, and then you get them in the factories to do the least. So I disagree with you there.
I think you're more cynical than I am, David. But no, seriously, you know, what you want is to, and the way you do it again is the money. And so my solution to it would be to have all these independent schools, but then not have them directly funded by anybody, either by central government or local government. But what you do is you give all the people who've got children of age to go to school a voucher, and you say, "There's your voucher," and you can even have the vouchers differentiated. So if some kids got special educational needs, they get a bigger voucher. And then they can take the voucher, go and select the school that they want, and that would solve the problem of allowing good schools to be successful.
You see, the problem, just to bring it home to the Wirral. On the Wirral, there are hundreds and hundreds of children who are homeschooled. And when I sat on the Children's Committee, we asked the question, which didn't go down very well, as to why they were homeschooled. And of course, the answer came back: they were homeschooled because their parents didn't trust the schools and they didn't want their children being indoctrinated in those schools. And so they actually took that decision, which is a massive decision, to homeschool your children. Well, there are hundreds on the Wirral.
I have a granddaughter, and I'm seriously considering trying to push her down that route because...
Absolutely. And that's a big ask for parents to do. But they were so committed, these people on the Wirral, to actually having the best education, not having them indoctrinated, not having them taught to hate their country, which is what happens in a lot of schools, by, let's be blunt, socialist-minded tutors. I mean, what's the stats in universities these days? Is it 95% of them are socialists and 5% keep their mouth shut? I mean, that's the way it works in this country. And unfortunately, as the great George Orwell would always say, the problem with socialism is that nothing actually ever gets achieved. And we are seeing that now. We are in 6 months, and the mess this country is in 6 months.
Yeah.
God help us in 4 years' time.
I agree entirely. I mean, I can't see any indicator that's positive at all.
And in fairness, Ken, I sort of sit there in my quiet time and I think there must be something they've done that's good.
No, see, I actually quite like it, because I think if we've given them all the rope that they want, and they will go and hang themselves, and in four years' time, particularly when you consider how this country is going to look by comparison with how America is going to look, because Donald Trump will drive America forward economically. It will be a huge success story. People there will be getting richer and richer, while here we will be getting poorer and poorer.
You're talking from a political standpoint, and I do understand where you're coming from, but I fear for my country that I love, because we have the...
I was going to come on to patriotism.
We come on to if you look at Europe, they're going to the right, and their young people are going to the right. That's the interesting thing. You look to America, which is the great influencer in the world, it's going to the right. We are going to be an outlier. I mean, somebody made a joke this morning on YouTube, ironically, when I was watching, that people may put sanctions on this country because we allow the abuse of our young girls. And it was made as a flippant comment. But you can almost see, we'd be doing this, if this was happening in France, we'd be saying to Macron, hang on a second, you need to stop this in your country. Otherwise, we're going to do something to stop it. And America certainly would, because Trump is not afraid to upset or ruffle feathers. And here we are in this country the cradle of the modern world. We invented the modern world, and we are allowing foreign men and their offspring to rape anally young white girls. I don't know how a prime minister of this country can ever go on the world stage again with a straight face and say Britain is a great country. And so I understand where you're coming from politically. It guarantees that Labour will not get in again. Hallelujah. But in that time of 4 years, the damage that we'll have on this country, it scares me, Ken. It really does scare me. And the only opposition is us. So if you're watching this, vote reform.